All right. Hey, you guys made it through Thanksgiving, and you're back for you got just over a week of full school left, and then finals week. And so it is kind of the holiday season. A lot of gifts. We've been doing the Gift or God series. We're going to keep it going tonight. As the guy said, my name's Heath Alexander. And so just a quick poll. Since it is a holiday season, we're talking about gifts. Who all hasn't even started their Christmas shopping yet? Raise your hand. Okay, yeah, I'm in that category. Who's all done with your Christmas shopping? Raise them high. Be proud. That's incredible. I'm not there. Hey, with your neighbor, if you could get one gift that you're really wanting this Christmas, what would it be? One gift this Christmas. Somebody shout out. What would be your gift? Hunting waders. What else? What's that? KitchenAid mixer. Yeah, that's a good gift for the ladies. It's great. A bowl game. May not get that one this year. Hey, so I had two things I was really hoping for this year. I've been hearing all the hype about Adidas tennis shoes, and I actually had two friends go in together to buy me a pair of Adidas Ultra Boost tennis shoes, and they are literally like walking on memory foam. No joke. Like, I was at my in-laws' house. I'd just gotten them, and I was like walking around their house without my shoes on, and I was like kind of uncomfortable, so I threw the Ultra Boost on just to sit around the house because it was so much more comfortable. Second gift is I currently wear a cheap Target watch. It costs $19 at Target, and I've been wanting a nicer watch, and so my very gracious and giving wife on Black Friday bought me a watch. It was like 80% off on Amazon, and this watch is sweet because it actually charges itself with light. So I never have to change the battery. I never have to worry about it going out. So literally, I'm charging it right now. I set it out on the deck. So it's charging this afternoon. And it literally, because it charged for 6 hours, I could put it in a dark room for 6 months, and it wouldn't have to be recharged, or the batteries wouldn't have to be replaced. So just as I go through life, this thing is going to last. It's a really nice watch. I'm excited to wear it. I'm actually waiting to wear it until it's fully charged, but I'm pumped about it. Hey, what do you guys think? What's the average American spend? Actually, I'm going to define gift first, and then we'll talk about that. A gift defined, we're talking about this Gift of God series. A gift defined is anything given to someone without payment. A present, something given to be enjoyed as a sign of love and or friendship. So what we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks is this idea of a gift or a God, okay? And so I did ask you guys a question. So what do you guys think? What's the average amount that Americans spend on Christmas gifts? This idea of giving something out of love because you care for them. So in a year, what's the average amount? $100? $700 is the average amount an American spends on Christmas gifts. Okay, so you got some people that spend way more than that, some people less. $700. So it kind of got me curious, this whole series we're doing, I'm the last one talking about gift or God. I'm like, man, I'm curious, what are the most expensive gifts that have ever been given, okay? This is in no particular order, but these are just some of the most expensive gifts. This is actually, if you look in the middle of this crown, there's a diamond for the Queen of England that was given by the king. He was a king of Sheik Empire back in the day. It was trying to find the date. It was a long time ago. Anyway, this thing has 184 carats, okay? Most engagement rings have 1 carat. Okay, this has 184 carats in it, and so it was given to her as a gift. So they don't know how much this diamond actually costs for the Queen of England. Okay, here's a rough estimate or a comparison. By comparison, there's a 45.42 carat Hope diamond that's said to be worth $250 million. Okay, so that is 45 carats versus 186 carats. Thing is one of the most expensive gifts given by the King Sheik given to the Queen of England. There was actually a billionaire banker in New York named Morton Plank, who actually, this was his house on Fifth Avenue in New York. If you know anything about Fifth Avenue, it's like the Commerce Center. It's where Saks Fifth Avenue is at. It's just where everybody that has anything to do with commerce goes. And so this was his house. And so because he wanted to get his wife a pearl necklace for Christmas, he exchanged to a jewelry company this house, which at that point was estimated to be about $1 million. Would be about $20 million today. and they gave him the pearl necklace. The pearl industry actually tanked quickly thereafter, and so this $1 million pearl necklace was actually only worth about $150 after that, and this has been the flagship store for that jewelry company that he sold this building to since then on Fifth Avenue. Hey, this is Leonard Lauder. He is a famous art collector, and so here recently he actually gave, try to fathom this, $1.1 billion worth of art. He donated it to the art museum. He got $1.1 billion of art, and instead of selling it, keeping it for himself, he decides he wants to donate it and gift it to the New York Metropolitan Art Museum. There's two brothers in India that are both billionaires, Mukesh and Anil. And so Mukesh gave his wife a $60 million jumbo jet for her birthday. That was a gift. So to not be outdone, his older brother, Anil, actually bought this yacht for $80 million to give to his wife for Christmas. Okay, this typical yacht's probably worth only about $8 million. So he paid $8 million and he just totally made it awesome with extra $80 million. Ladies, you'll enjoy this one. This is a Russian billionaire. He's an oil tycoon named Mikhail Getserov. I'm probably butchering his name. Anyway, his son got married, and for the wedding, he spent an estimated $1 billion on his son and future daughter-in-law's wedding. Here's her wedding dress, which is estimated at $1 million. $1 million for a wedding dress that he spent. This is a 9-layer cake that they used at the wedding. This was the ballroom of the wedding. So, hey, listen to this. It was a lavish multi-day, multi-city affair with featured performances by Jennifer Lopez, Sting, and Enrique Iglesias. $1 billion. It's crazy. Hey, so we're talking about gifts and God giving us gifts. And I think, those are fun to talk about and to think about. And it's like, man, how cool is it that God has given us gifts? That He gives us things to enjoy, whether it be intimacy, physical intimacy, which is one of the most powerful gifts He's given us, emotional intimacy, which is one of our greatest needs that He's given us. He's given us the gift of time, that we do have a period of time that we'll be on this earth, and we get to choose how we spend it. Can we use it to honor Him as a gift, or do we idolize it and make it into a god? Our social life and our friends and our relationships and how we conduct ourselves, in a lot of ways, one of the coolest gifts God's given us because He's made us to want to know other people. And a lot of times we can turn it into a god. And He really is a good God. I think it gives a good picture of how good He is. I was thinking about this verse this week when I was thinking about this message in Matthew 5. It says this. It says, talking about God, it says, He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. And I was like, man, how good is God that He allows even those who are in active rebellion to Him, who hate Him and don't even believe in Him, to enjoy the things like intimacy. And they get to enjoy time on this earth, and they get to enjoy a social life, even if they never get to a point where they finally surrender their will and fully trust in Jesus for an eternal life with Him in heaven. He still allows them those good gifts. And so I think it's cool that God is a God who gives us gifts, but we have to be careful, as we mentioned before, that we don't turn it into a god. And so instead of looking at Webster's definition, we defined a gift as something that's given out of love. I'm going to go back to a definition that Cody actually used before Thanksgiving. We're going to pack it a little bit more just to help put us a frame of reference of what is this idea of God when we take a gift and we make it into a god. And Tim, the guy who actually uses this definition, he's a doctor, pastor in New York who obviously loves the Lord and has been studying this concept for a long time. And he uses the word idol. Okay, instead of God, he uses the word idol. And so check out how he defines it. He says, what is an idol or God, small g? It's anything more important to you than big G God, the God of the universe. Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. Anything you seek to give you what only God can give you. An idol is whatever you look at and say, in your heart of hearts, if I have that, then I'll feel my life has meaning, then I'll know I have value, and I'll feel significant and secure. Because a lot of times we think of an idol as something like a rock or a statue that I bow down to. But he's saying on a heart level, really it's something that when I look at it, and I say in my heart of hearts, if I have that, then I'll feel my life has meaning, then I'll know I have value, and I'll feel significant and secure. Because you think about that God is very much against taking other things and replacing him with it. So think about the shoes. Talk about my two friends that gave me those shoes. So imagine it's a weekend, they're wanting to hang out, they're wanting to talk, and so they shoot me a text and like, hey, we got some free time, let's kick it, let's hang out. And I'm like, no, it's all good. I'm cleaning my Adidas Ultra Boosts. Maybe next week. And so next week comes, hey, call me up. Hey, we're headed to Kansas City. Jump in with us. We'd love for you to go. We'd love to spend some time with you. No, it's all good. I'm relacing my Ultra Boosts this afternoon. Every week, Kara and I, my wife, take a date night on Wednesday night. We go get dinner together, do something fun together, invest in our marriage. So Wednesday night rolls around. I come home 5:15, and I'm walking by, headed down to my office, and hey, were we going on a date tonight? No, I'm going to go program my watch, spend some time with it tonight. I'm going to clean it and going to look online, all the features it has. I'm going to charge it in the sun for a couple hours. It's stupid, right? It's silly. But in a lot of ways, that's what happens is that God gives us these gifts. Those gifts were given so that the relationship with me and my wife and my friends would grow. And in a lot of ways, we take these gifts and we do something even more silly and stupid, and we turn them into gods that we worship and let our heart go after and chase after. And so God's been very clear. If you study the Word, I'm just going to give a quick snapshot of how does God feel about us taking things that are gifts and turning them into gods that we worship and we long for and go after. In Exodus 20, he says, you shall have no other gods, no other idols before me. He goes on in Isaiah 46, he says, I am God, and there is no other God. And I am God, and there's none like me. They don't even compare these gifts that you guys and myself turn into gods. He says, turn to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is no other. So the things that I look at and think, this is going to give me purpose and satisfaction, fulfillment, God's saying, hey, turn away from those things in your heart. And he says, because there's really no other God that's there. Psalm 81:9, he says, you shall have no foreign God among you, and you shall not worship any God other than me. Is that God wants us to do what he created us to do, which is to know him, to pursue him, and to serve him, and not get taken away and distracted by some of these idols. And so tonight we're going to talk about success. We've talked about intimacy, time, social life. Tonight we're going to talk about success. What does God say about this beautiful gift that he's given us of ambition, of wanting to be successful, of really wanting to achieve things in my life? So here's the definition of success. It's the accomplishment of an aim or a purpose, the attainment of popularity or profit, a person or thing that achieves desired aims or attains prosperity. I think we know what success is. You guys know what success is. And so some of the guys mentioned a little bit earlier, but I thought of a couple people that come to mind when you think of success in our culture. I think of Jay-Z and Beyonce. You talk about two folks in the entertainment realm that are very successful, that are household names, that have really taken their life and really achieved a lot with it. I think of Chip and Joanna Gaines. Okay, got some responses there. HGTV's blown up because of them. Taking a pretty simple idea of turning houses and making them beautiful, and they have a whole kingdom down there in Texas. What's the name of it? Magnolia Farms, yep. Think of Michael B. Jordan right now, very successful. He's actually not related, nor was he named after Michael Jordan, interesting fact. But he's probably one of the hottest actors right now that everybody wants to be in the movies. Forbes right now puts out this thing called the Top 30 Under 30. And so they'll kind of go all over the U.S. and find out, hey, who are the top 30 most successful individuals that are under 30 years old? Whether they're athletes, they're actors, they're entrepreneurs, they're businessmen, they're millionaires, and they say, hey, these are the top 30 under 30. And so for you, that may be, hey, when I think of success, man, I think of that. Tom Brady, 5 Super Bowl rings. Okay, they talked about MJ, they talked about LeBron, but they didn't mention Bill Russell. Okay, Bill Russell has 11 championships. Okay, I think MJ's got, 6? You could throw Bill Russell in there, but you talk about success, 11 NBA championships. Mentioned Jeff Bezos earlier. I actually looked up a little bit on him. So Bill Gates is currently estimated at $92 billion, and the guys mentioned Bezos is somewhere between 130 and 160. It's probably hard to estimate how much he's actually worth. There was a thing that I read online that talked about every minute he makes $230,000. So every single minute, he makes $230,000. Okay? Talk about success. Hey, when you think of success, you may think of that friend or that family member that recently graduated that moved to Denver or Dallas or Kansas City and bought a house just like this. Got a nice, Toyota Camry and good job. It's got good pension and a good retirement, good investments. They got a beautiful spouse and a nice family. Man, that would really be success for you. So you can see that success has like in a way, it's kind of an umbrella term. It's different for every single person. So with your neighbor, when you think of success, how would you define success? Because it's going to be different for every single person. So with your neighbor, when you think of success, what's the top thing that you think of when you hear the word success? Hey, if I took a poll tonight, there'd probably be a few hundred different definitions for success. And here's even some that probably would fall under the umbrella: financial security, that I can get a job that pays me this amount a year. Man, I would be a success, at that point. Or maybe it's a relationships I've had that I kind of view that as success because I've dated or I've been with this person or these type of people. Or even, man, if I could marry or be dating this person, then I would consider myself a success. Or, man, if this person knows me and I know them and I'm connected and networked, then I would be a success. Or, man, if I have the perfect, impeccable grades with the perfect, impressive resume that could get me any job that I want, then I could say I'm a success. Man, maybe it's fame. Is it, man, my name is in the record books athletically, or people remember me for the business and the amount of money that I made, or the entrepreneurship and the things I created and started with. Or maybe it's just respect and power. This is big for guys. Is it that people would just look at me and have respect, and they would see me as a powerful person. Man, at that point, then it would be a success. Or maybe it's just the perfect position and the perfect job that just fires me up, of something I've dreamed about since I was little. That would be success for me. Or maybe for me, it's just as simple as the comfortable American dream: nice big house, nice car, both of us with good salaries, good family, good kids, good retirement so that we can retire, buy an RV, go to Arizona, and get golf every weekend. That would be success. It's different for everybody, but as I've studied it and I've thought about it and I've read about it this week, this is how I would boil it down, really what success is. The thought that I have arrived. When I think of, and I picture, hey, my foreseeable future, and whatever it may be, that if I get to that point in my heart, there'll be this thought that I have arrived, that I've made it. If I'm a recognized athlete, man, if I could just get there, I would have arrived. If I was a successful musician, or if I made over $100K a year, man, at that point, there would be a satisfaction because in my mind, I've really arrived. Or I'd be a really good mom with several kids. That would be a success for me, and I have arrived. And so it's different for every single person, but it's important to kind of boil it down. And so I want to look at two realities with success tonight that even God teaches us from the Word that I think is good for us to realize. And I would say two realities. The first one is that success is an incredible gift. It really is, that God would allow us to be ambitious, that God would allow us to achieve and to advance and to be successful is an incredible gift. Because I think there's this tendency to be like, man, being successful is kind of sinful. And it's kind of bad to have ambition and want to do something. And I would say, as you study the Bible, as we're going to look at here, is that I don't think that's true at all. I would say even the opposite, is that God desires us to be people that have ambition and that strive and want to be successful. If you even start at the first book of the Bible in Genesis 1, the entire chapter, I read it this afternoon, you'll see this consistent theme where it says God created or God made, and then soon thereafter he would say it was good. Is that God created, God made, and it was good. And so you even see God having ambition and being successful himself in the core of who he is as our God. Is that he created and he made, and man, he was successful, and it was good. And then even in Genesis 1, it goes on to talk about even his command for us from the very beginning. It said God blessed them, talking about Adam and Eve, the first two human beings. And he said, be fruitful and increase in number. He says, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. He's saying, hey, for you, be successful. Make a ton of babies and be successful by subduing the earth. So you think about that. He's talking about ruling over the fish in the sea. He's saying the world's kind of disorganized, and I want you to put it in order. It's good that I made it, but your job is to put it in order, and I want you to have ambition and drive and achieve and even to be successful. Matthew 25 tells a story that Jesus tells as a parable, which is it's a story that parallels spiritual truth. And in the story, Jesus talks about this master that gives three different guys 3 different amounts of money. And this guy leaves and goes on a journey, and he comes back later, and he wants to get an account for what these guys did with his money. And so the first couple guys come and say, hey, I've taken your money, and I was successful with it. I had ambition. I had drive. I invested it. And I moved it around, and I made a ton more money, and I want to give that back to you. And second guy, same thing. Not as much as the first, but still a pretty good amount of money. And then the third guy, it's like, no, I didn't do anything with it. And it's interesting because Jesus actually rebukes him and calls him out for not being successful, for not having ambition and striving and trying to do what he can to really multiply the resources that master gave him. And it's cool because he talks to those first two and he says this. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. He desired them to have ambition and to take what had been entrusted to them and to multiply it. Colossians 3:23 is a couple verses in the New Testament. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Is he saying, have ambition, be successful, give it your all, do your best. Jeremiah 29:11, even in the Old Testament, God talking about his heart for us, one of the most popular verses in the U.S. But you see his heart there where he says he has plans to prosper us. And that doesn't mean that I just lay back and do nothing, but he's saying I really have plans that you would be successful, that you would have ambition. There really is something that's like God that he's allowed us whenever we achieve. You guys think about that. When you get a good grade on an exam, there's a joy that comes along with that success. When you land that internship, there's a joy that comes along. Someday when you land that job, fellas, when you get down on that knee and you propose and she says yes, ladies, there'll be a lot of joy of the success that you attracted him to yourself and it worked. And fellas, that she was dumb enough to say yes to you. There's success there. Is that it really is one of the most incredible gifts God's given us. There's actually a study called the winner effect. I think this is cool because it shows that God even hardwired it in our DNA. Is that whenever you succeed, again, like I mentioned, you study really hard and get a good exam, test on your grade on your test or exam. You write a paper and you get good reviews. You win a game. You land that job. You get promoted. There is a mixture of dopamines and endorphins and testosterone that's actually pumped into your brain to reaffirm that that was a good thing. Is that God, even on our most basic human level, desires us to have ambition and to strive for success. I think you even see the beautiful gift that ambition has led to in our culture. I think about our growing infrastructure here in the United States, things like highways and sewers and stop signs. You think about medical advances in the world where diseases are overcome and they have solutions for them. Where poverty still is an issue but is less because of the way to filter water and to help get food to people who need food. Is that we've benefited from even technological advances. And we can learn so much because people have been successful and have had ambition, and God's given us that gift to ultimate enjoy. So to think that, ambition or desiring success is sin could get to that point, but at its basic core of what God designed it to be, it's not. It's a gift that's really incredible and something that we get to enjoy and get to see and be a part of for the rest of our life. But here's the second reality, is that while it's an incredible gift, it's actually a terrible God. Success really is a terrible God. And I want to look at 2 different interactions Jesus has that he actually focuses in on this whole topic about it being a terrible God. And so he's going to give us 2 different pictures, and I'll give 2 different examples of what it is. So the first one is a parable about a guy who's really successful. And what you'll see in this parable that Jesus is telling to this group of guys and girls is he's wanting them to see, hey, if you give your whole life to success, you're going to realize it doesn't last. No matter how much success that you attain and how much success you acquire, it is going to have an end date. There's an expiration date for that. So follow along with me. It's actually Jesus speaking in Luke 12. And so it says, then he said to them, the group of people that are there with him, he said, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in abundance of possessions. So he's already setting the stage to say, hey, I'm going to teach you a lesson that I want you to remember for the rest of your life, is that you have to watch out. You have to be aware that success, while it's a great gift, it's a very dangerous gift as well. And so he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. So here's this guy, successful. In that culture, farming was one of the most popular career choices. And so here's this guy who worked his tail off, gave his whole life to growing his crops, and he was successful. He had a lot of ambition, a lot of discipline, gave his whole life and his heart to it. And guess what? He had so much crops, like he even says to himself, I don't have a place to store those crops. So he goes on. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns, and I'll build even bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. I've got so much grain, I've already packed out the barns I had last year, even when I was successful, that I've got to tear them down, and I've got to build even bigger ones, because success is what I'm giving my life to. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain, lay up for many years, take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Probably in his mind, this is what he's dreamed of his whole life. And he's thinking, I'll have arrived. Man, I've got so much grain that I have to build bigger barns. I can say to myself, hey, take it easy, you're done. Just eat, drink, and be merry. You've given your whole life to this moment, and you've arrived. You are successful. And then it goes on. But God said to him, so God steps in here and has a conversation. He says, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. And then he poses a question to him. He says, then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? It's a good perspective change. He's saying, hey, you've torn down your barns. You are fat and happy and wealthy. You've got enough financial security to not work the rest of your life. This is a moment you dreamed of and gave your whole life to. And then God says, hey, tonight, your life is going to be demanded of you. And then all that money, all that resources, all that success you had, where is that going to go? To who is it going to go? And he gives good perspective to help us realize that, man, that guy gave his whole life and spent his whole life on that, and it ended up spending. He says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Now, Jesus doesn't say that storing things up is sin, and he doesn't say being wealthy is sin, but what he is trying to help us see with this picture in the story is that ultimately it's not going to last. You know, when you think about it, if you've heard any interviews of Tom Brady, Deion Sanders, other famous athletes would say that one of the most miserable times of their life is when they're pinnacle of their success. Success is a mean God that once I get to that place that I thought I've arrived at, I just look for the next place. And I look for the next thing to say I've arrived. And again, success isn't bad, but when it becomes all that I give my life to as my God, it leaves me empty. Not many of you guys may know who this is, but this is a guy named Ronnie Coleman. Okay, Ronnie Coleman is arguably the best bodybuilder that ever lived. He actually has more Mr. Olympia titles than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I had a buddy text me this week, and he's like, hey, if you haven't seen this documentary on Netflix, you need to watch it. And so what the documentary is all about is how Ronnie took his whole life and everything he did, what he ate, what he drank, how much he slept, how much he worked out, even his whole family suffered as a result to say, I want to be the biggest bodybuilder and the best bodybuilder that's ever existed. And I think it's interesting because I think it's a visual illustration of a spiritual truth. Is that Ronnie, again, is arguably the best that's ever existed. Probably had the best muscled body that's ever existed. Well, this is a picture of him in 2004 on your left, and this is a picture of him today in 2018. He's recently had 9 surgeries on his body. He takes 3 of the maximum dose of oxycodone that he can a day to try to take away the pain from all the destruction that he did to his body with steroids and heavy weightlifting. And I mean, you just talk about trying to gain that much weight and maxing out your body like that. And so it's this investment in trying to be successful in this very temporary thing that doesn't last. And again, most of us, probably none of us in this room, are going to be bodybuilders. But I think, again, there's a parallel of a spiritual truth that you can see visually how, man, investing your life in something, specifically success, doesn't last and won't continue on. Here's the second thing, is that because it's a terrible God, not only doesn't last, but it also distracts us from real success. it distracts us from real success. So the second interaction, this is actually an interaction Jesus has with a person. So a guy approaches Jesus. He's known as a rich young ruler. So he's about college age, young professional age, super wealthy, has a bunch of land, and here he's approaching Jesus with a very intriguing question. So he approaches Jesus, and follow along with me. It says that a certain ruler, talking about this young, successful guy, asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" So Jesus responded, "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered, "No one is good except God alone." He says, "You know the commandments. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother." So Jesus is trying to help him see, hey, if you want to know God, you want to live an eternal life, you got to live a perfect life. Okay? He's already broken down that adultery means a lustful thought. Murder means a lustful feeling or emotion towards somebody. Stealing means even the smallest thing that I've taken that wasn't mine. Most of us would be like, hey, well, I haven't kept those commandments. This guy says, all these I've kept since I was young. Okay? When Jesus heard this, he said to them, you still lack one thing. Okay, so Jesus kind of gives them the rundown. Hey, you got to keep the commandments perfectly. This guy says he has. I debate whether he actually did, but maybe he did. Jesus gets to the heart of the issue with him. Okay, he says, you still lack one thing. Sell everything you have, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. He says, then come follow me. Okay, so he's saying, hey, at the heart of the issue, you're a rich, wealthy, successful person. And he said, if you want to know what it means to have eternal life and to know me, keep the commandments. Okay, I've done it. Well, then on a heart level, I have to be the God in your life, not your wealth. So to help that happen, I want you to sell everything you have that is tied to your heart, and I want you to follow me. See the response. It said when he heard this, he became very sad because he was very wealthy. Jesus looked at him and said, how hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God? So here's the second reality why it's a bad God. It's a terrible God to worship and to follow is because it distracts us from really giving our life to what's successful. Think about this. This guy is wealthy, he's successful, but here is the king of the universe in front of him. Here's the one who actually created him and gave him his wealth as a gift, who's about to die on the cross for him so that he can have eternal life. And he says, hey, why don't you come follow me? And this guy is so absorbed with his camels and his donkeys and all of his fields and his crops that he turns the king of the universe down. And he says, no, I'm good. This stuff's pretty stinking good. And I'm going to keep giving my life to it. And even Jesus finished, he says, man, how hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven? And the reason is because, man, when I let success be the God that I bow down and worship and serve, it distracts me from really giving my life to what God calls being a success. It distracts from what real success is. He missed out on what Jesus had for him in his life. Hey, well, each week we want to give you guys an in-the-flesh example of what these different things that we talk about with these Gift or God series, what these actually look like, somebody who's been in your shoes, who is in your shoes, who's wrestling through this thing and thinking through these things. And so tonight we want to hear from a buddy of mine named Dylan who's going to talk about what it's looked like for him as he's wrestled through this whole idea of gift from God, specifically with success in college. So welcome up Dylan with me.
Hello? There we go. Yeah, so growing up, from time or as early as I can remember, I always really just desired to be successful. Didn't matter if it was sports or school or even just playing games with friends. I always just wanted to have success in what I was doing. And faith was part of my life from a very young age. Family went to church just about every week, and I had a pretty good idea of who God was. But in terms of my priorities, success in some of those areas like school and sports were of much higher importance to me than my relationship with God. And so I hate to break out the yearbook, but back in high school, some of those areas were pursuit of success in football and baseball. And so I gave countless hours of my time to practicing, to working out, and to just doing whatever I could to help my team be successful. And we were successful. We actually won a couple state championships, but I just remember after those just having this lack of fulfillment from them compared to the time and the effort that I had put into them. And then after graduating high school, coming to college, I still just desired success. And so academics actually became the avenue through which I pursued it. And so now instead of just hours, in the practice on the practice field and in the weight room. Now it was hours studying for tests and just working on a homework. And so, I was determined to get that 4.0 and just willing to do really whatever it was or whatever I could to make that happen. And so there was one semester, I remember finals week was coming up, and I was sitting just pretty good with all my classes except for one. That class was thermodynamics. And so going into the final, I needed about a mid 90 on the final to get the grade I was going for. And I was just super stressed out, really worried, and just full of anxiety because it was going to be super hard to do that. That was way higher than any of my previous test scores in that class. And so I remember pulling out my calculator, like so many of us do during finals week, and pulling up the syllabus and calculating exactly how many points I could miss to get that grade. And that really just led to more anxiety, more stress, more worry. And so as the final came closer, I really began to kind of question, man, why do I care about this so much? Why am I so worried about this? Why is this, giving me just such a great amount of stress in my life? And that was kind of when I'd come to the realization that I had made success a God in my life. It had been a God then with academics, and then back in high school just with athletics. And so kind of at that point, I remember just really praying to God and meeting with some of my mentors and just kind of processing through how I hadn't been putting God, above my pursuit of success in some of those different areas. And like I said, just after a couple days of prayer and just talking with some of them, I kind of came to the point where I was ready to give over that area of my life to God. And remember after doing that, just feeling this huge weight come off my shoulders, just not having that anxiety and worry and stress over, just having to get that grade anymore. And so the funny thing was I actually went into that final super relaxed. I was like, man, I'm feeling good. I don't, screw grades anymore. I don't care about that. And I actually, got the grade that I needed on that final to get what I was going for in the class. And so it was kind of cool to see God still just grant me success in that area, even though I'd given up control of it to him. And so, it's not that, the pursuit of success in academics and athletics that I had were bad things in and of themselves. It was just that I had been putting pursuing success in those areas above my pursuit of God and my relationship with him. And so, really just looking back, I think what made me want to make that decision to put God above success in my life was that, God was eternal, and my grades and my athletic success that I'd had in the past were not. And so, 5 years from now, no one's going to ask me what my GPA was in college, and no one even in college cares about state championships. I get made fun of in that in my fraternity. And so really I just kind of came to the realization that Christ is who I wanted to pursue ultimately, and just treat that success that he had given me in the past and would bring in the future as a gift from him. And so now that I am doing that, now that I'm pursuing God above success and putting him first, my daily time of the Word, time in prayer with him, come before anything else. And so with finals week coming up here pretty soon, I'm still going to be preparing for my finals, still going to be studying and wanting to do as good as I can on them. But it's not going to take precedence over my relationship with God. It's not going to get in the way of my daily time with him. And so really I'm just going to, and what the mindset that I've had since I made that decision was really, I'm just going to be content with the outcome, whether God brings success or not. It's not like just because I've, started pursuing him above success that he's just automatically going to bring me success. That's just not the case. And so just being, content with the outcome no matter what happens, because, I believe that just pursuing success is not going to be as fulfilling as pursuing my relationship with God and just making that the number one goal in my life. Thank you.
One thing that if you know Dylan, so I think it's cool how he kind of clarified that, is that, and even told in his story, it's like, man, on a heart level, suddenly his success wasn't the thing he was bowing down and worshiping, but now God was really the God. No longer was he making the gift of God. But if you still know Dylan, he's an engineer, very disciplined with his studies, still gets incredible grades. So it's cool because it doesn't mean that suddenly now Dylan's flunking out of Kansas State and ignoring his grades, but he's taking care of them. But God is really on the throne of his life as he's trying to still be a successful man with the things that God's given him, but ultimately measuring success in God. I want to go back to a verse we looked at earlier, and this is a comment that Jesus makes. He says, "This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." And when I was studying this week, I was like, man, that's an interesting statement that Jesus makes, because we're talking about success, and what he's saying is he's giving a contrast. Those who are giving their life to success on this earth and those who are totally neglecting success in heaven versus those who are giving their life to being successful and rich towards God. So I thought, hey, what does that mean? Walking away from tonight, what's it mean to be successful in the eyes of God? And so I'm just going to look at 3 things from Matthew, 3 things that come out of the mouth of Jesus himself that we can walk away and say, hey, what's it look like for me to be successful in the eyes of God, to be rich towards God? And Jesus breaks it down. A guy approaches Jesus, asks a very simple question, and says, Jesus, if you could put everything in the Bible and give me the most important thing from what the Bible says and what you say, what would it be? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And he says this is the first and greatest commandment. He even goes on later to say that all of the Bible is summarized in this one statement, is that if I am going to be a success at the end of my life and for the rest of eternity, then I live out my created purpose, the purpose that I take every single breath of every single day, the purpose that as my heart beats and why I continue to exist, that I live it out. And I would put it this way, it's just real love for God. That on not a hollow religiosity way of just going through the motions, but actually on a heart level that I want to know God. I want to seek him. I want to obey him. I want to honor him with my life day in and day out. And even the success that I will most likely have, I want that to be an offering to him and not in and of itself the God that I'm really trying to love and get to know. So at the end of the day, that my life is really trying to honor and to really please and to bring success to God is real love for him. Second one, Matthew again. He says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. And he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So the second thing, Jesus out of his mouth, defining what success looks like, says for us is you invest in that which lasts. You give your greatest efforts to investing in that which lasts while you're still taking care of the business that God's given you. Tests, exams. Someday you're going to have a job and a family. And you're taking care of those things, but I'm really investing with my life and my purpose in those things that moth and rust and thieves cannot touch and can't destroy. And the last one Jesus talks about in Matthew 6, he's talking to a group of people and he says, hey, so don't worry saying, what shall we eat or what shall we drink or what shall we wear? For the pagans, which just means those who don't know God, they run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows you need them. Saying, don't strive after the bigger house, the bigger car, the nicer clothes. He's saying, but if you'll give your life to one thing, he says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And he says, I'll take care of your success. If you will live your life in a way that honors me and you'll seek me and my kingdom and knowing me and making me known, I'll take care of the details of your success. And so the third thing is, how do I know I'm successful? Is I prioritize his priorities from the Bible, from what he reveals in it. That's why I'll know I'll be a success. We're not going to have time to cover it, but on the bottom of your sheet, we've been talking over these last 4 weeks the difference between a gift, something that's given as a present to enjoy and see, and it's a mark of love, but the danger of also making it a God. And so we've talked about 4 different things. There's probably 100 different things. And so what I've done is I've kind of placed some questions at the bottom of your sheet that help you answer the question, how do I know if it's a gift or a God in my life? Whether it's money or whether it's success like we talked about tonight, or whether it's intimacy, or whatever else it may be, how do I know if it's a gift or a God in my life? And so those questions will help. What do I love the most? What do I seek after the hardest? What do I long for the most? What brings me the most delight? And am I willing to change my definition of that thing? And so you can insert anything you want in those questions. I've included some verses with it that I think will really help you tell the difference. Hey, is this area in my life, is it a gift that I'm enjoying, or have I really turned it into a God that I really think in my mind I've arrived? And that thing will give me purpose, satisfaction, and fulfillment. There's a guy named C.T. Studd he would blow Michael Jordan, LeBron James out of the water, Bill Russell, Tom Brady. He was the most successful of the most popular sport back in his day in the early 1800s in England, cricket. He actually was offered millions of dollars, which is crazy to think about for stinking cricket. He was offered millions of dollars to go pro as one of the best cricket players of his generation. And he turned it down, actually. Is that he saw a risk, and this isn't the application for all of us, but he saw a risk of this gift that God had given him of turning into a God and letting it consume him. And so he gave his life to saying, I'm going to become a success in the kingdom of God. I'm going to please God with the life that I live, and I want God at the end of my day to say, well done, versus call me out for not living a life of success for him. And at the end of his life, he actually wrote this really long poem. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but one of the most impactful things that he's ever said that's impacted me when I look at his life is he says these two lines that they're very impactful if you think about them for a second. And so towards the end of his poem, he wrote this. He says, only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And if you think about that poem, and even that stanza, it's like, man, Heath Alexander has one life. And very soon, it's going to be past. And he's making a good statement. He's saying, only what you do to be successful for Christ on the end of your life when you're laying on your deathbed is really what's going to last and what's going to be most important. Only one life, it really will soon be past. And only what's done for Jesus Christ is what's going to eternally last and be eternal of value. So to close us down, just to reflect over what we've talked about, I've got some discussion questions I want you guys to talk with your neighbor. So there's these 3 questions that kind of cover the last 4 weeks of what we've talked about in here tonight, and then the MCs are going to jump back up here and kind of close us down for tonight. So go ahead and discuss these 3 questions, and we'll come back here in a second.